Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm so excited for today's session. We have a lot of exciting stuff to go through. I prepared lots of interesting examples and things that I've been busy working on for my latest classes on Skillshare, but also lots of other exciting projects that I've been working on. So the main topic for today's session is how generative AI can be used for graphic design specifically and illustration as well. And what are the most important things to avoid doing? So I'm going to give you a couple of things that I've learned since I've been using AI almost, I would say, for 2 years now. It's still changing how AI is part of my creative workflow, but there are certain things that I've learned that is good to avoid. And I've learned certain things that are best to do with AI. And actually, I prefer to do it using AI instead of using traditional techniques that I used to have in my workflow before. But I will also have some live demos, although that's always a tricky thing to do with AI because it's a little bit unpredictable at times. But I will try to do some live demos throughout this session, besides going through the examples that I wanted to cover. So we will be looking at projects varying from posters, magazine covers, editorial design, book design, illustrations as well. And of course, since it's a live session, I'm really interested to see what all of you think about AI, uh, how do you use it in your workflow, if you use it at all. Yeah, so I will also try to work with you in this session. So we'll try to keep it interactive, and we will be testing out a couple of things like latest release Firefly boards, which is now completely available. It's still in a beta, but it's a public beta, and we will see if we can use it for this session. And yeah, so I think we are ready to get started. So I have my screen. I have this collection of examples on my screen in this board, and I will walk you through all of these. But before we jump into the examples, I wanted to bring up one additional thing, which is what I mentioned, what not to do when using generative AI. So I came up with these 5 rules that I think is good to discuss in the beginning, and you will see me referring to these throughout the whole session. So these are like really the most useful things to keep in mind. First of all, the composition is the key for every creative project, and the composition itself, or you can say the idea behind a project that you're working on, should always come from you. That shouldn't come from AI. So it's not something that oh, what shall I make for this project? Let's say you have the brief, and then you start asking AI to create some images, and then you let yourself be or let AI be the defining factor in your composition. That is not a good idea. It can be too limiting, and it also takes away already in the beginning the creative control from you. So the composition itself shouldn't be defined by AI, and that's very important. So, by the way, the examples that I have here are from a project that you will see soon. These are all the ways that AI can go wrong. So these all supposed to be completely different than what they turned out to be. So the second thing, don't try to generate complex compositions in a single step. So again, if you rely on AI to create the entire composition, which can be most of the time fairly complex, then you will fail, or you will waste too much time again, if you do it that way. So again, you will see me that generating assets for a composition makes more sense than trying to generate the entire composition. Again, that takes away too much control if you try to do that. Third, don't limit yourself to text prompts. And this is probably the most important one. You will see me doing or aiding AI with a lot of other things than just simply text. So writing something down that you imagined is useful, but that shouldn't be the defining step in your composition again. So there's so many other ways of prompting AI to generate something, whether it's a sketch, whether it's a 3D mockup, whether it's a screenshot from Google Maps. You will see me using all of these things and only using text prompt almost like to supplement these inputs. So that's also a very important like rule of thumb that I stick to whenever I use AI. Also important, don't give up on your vision too easily. And this can happen especially when AI comes up with some really cool stuff. Like you generate images and some of them turn out really cool, but they're completely different from what you imagined. It's very easy to be led by the AI astray and go in different directions that you originally imagined. And to a certain extent, it's good to give yourself freedom in exploring different directions and let AI be more like a partner, a creative partner who you can brainstorm with, but you shouldn't be interrupted in your flow by AI, or shouldn't change completely the direction because of AI. So that's again something that you are the one who should stay in creative control, and don't let AI overrule that. And last but not least, whenever you use AI, another very important thing is don't change too many parameters or settings all at once, because then you won't know actually what helped to improve your prompt or your generation. So again, this is something you will see me doing. I always tweak small things incrementally, and that way I can really understand what is happening and what was the most important change that helped me to get the right generated image. So yeah, remember these 5 things that I have here. You can take a screenshot of it. If you need to see it again, I can bring it up one more time. But yeah, this I found to be probably the most useful ones to keep in mind. So let me move to the board that I have open here. And by the way, we will be using quite a lot of different tools. We will be using Midjourney, Adobe Firefly, Magnific, and we will be using also maybe ChatGPT for a couple of things, and of course Adobe Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator. So yeah, there's a lot to go through. So let me jump back to my examples. And the first thing that I wanted to mention is that when you rely on text prompts, so when you generate images, of course, you can create amazing results. And even if you just rely on text prompts, the creative idea is key. So, for instance, here, this was a simple prompt that a volcano erupts liquid gold, or yeah, like molten gold. That was the something simple as that, and I was explaining that it's completely grayscale, dark, black rocks, and contrasted with this bright gold that's erupting from the volcano. So for an image like this, I didn't need a reference image to use. I could just prompt this, and this was actually done, I think, in Midjourney. Similarly to this, I had this idea of having marble statues sitting on the underground. That again, for this, I didn't need a sketch to put in. I just wanted to see what Midjourney can come up with, and it created some amazing examples. This was probably my favorite one. And then in other cases, when I want to have a more specific composition, that's when I start to use sketches. So you can see an example of whimsical illustration, a very rough sketch I did. I had this idea of having a medieval um, composition of two knights fighting a massive dragon, and it's so big that we only see one of the legs or the foot. And then I intentionally didn't even draw anything in the background because I wanted this to be very clear in the composition. And this was very early on. So it was when I think Midjourney was probably only in version 4 or 5, but I already managed to create a really good result with it. And I actually used Magnific as well in the early days when style transfer was just introduced. So, but again, you can see the clear thing here is that the composition was already defined by the illustration. And then later on, I refined a couple of things, and it wasn't like a straight up um, transfer of my sketch to the final version, but it still relies a lot on my illustration. I also did a stream on our channel about this project where I was working on posters for a supermarket, which is an organic, which is marketing itself, that is creates organic produce. And again, here the concept was recorded in a sketch format, and the sketch was used in ChatGPT with the prompt itself explaining what it is. So it's a broccoli and a carrot as parents holding their child, which is a combination of them two, broccoli, carrot. And yeah, ChatGPT did an amazing job. And then I did a couple of additional variations on that. The same thing with this sketch, which I had about like a landscape, which I wanted to be all made of food. So this is how it turned out in the end. For this, again, I use ChatGPT, but you can see how closely it relies on the original sketch. And there's a couple of other examples here as well. I'm not going to go into too much detail on this, but here's already something that I've learned that can be extremely useful. So when you are sketching and you create a rough sketch of the illustration that you want to create, that can already be extremely useful for maintaining the composition that you had in mind. Because then whichever tool you are using will be able to stick to that composition. Usually it's called composition or structure reference. And as you can see, here's the same illustration made out of felt, or here's another illustration that looks more like something that could be 3D generated, but all relies on the original composition. But sometimes, if you want, let's say, the colors to be more similar to a specific set of colors, then one useful thing to do is to maybe mock up your illustration or composition in Illustrator and just use a couple of simple vector shapes. So here I just traced over that illustration. You can see I didn't put any shading or any details in. I just created the most basic necessary shapes, but then this would be easier to use to maintain also the colors that I want for my composition. So if colors are important, then it's a useful step to do to render for generating the image. It's going to render it based on these colors, so you can ask AI to stick more closer to that. But you can go even further than that. And if you want, let's say, the background to be a specific color or a different style, you can see what you can also do is to just use that background detail. So if I'm just going to open up this illustration, let me just open this up, the llama illustration. So you see, when you have it, let's say, if I set this up on a separate layer, just quickly take off the llama, put it on a separate layer, I could just export this image, and maybe even the cacti I can remove and just say, I want the mountains to be generated first. So the good thing about that is that it won't affect the llama itself. and then you can combine the two things together. So think of like layers. You generate multiple layers individually, and then you combine them together. So I intentionally did this before this session because it can take a little bit long time to see the results, but you can see how many different variations I can come up with for the background, just by using different reference images, slightly different prompts. You can see lots of variations that I can create. So in this case, I wanted to create something like a clay model, something that could be like a claymation version of this illustration. This I really like. I think it's really cool. It's very simple. It's very similar to the original colors. So this could already work with that. Even the grass there looks quite cool. So maybe let's just say we want to use this one. So I'm just going to download this quickly. Let's open this up in Photoshop. But just for variety, I'm also going to download another one that's a little bit more crazy, like this one. I also like this. So let's just drop this in as well into Photoshop. I'm actually going to copy this over here. No, that's not the one. Let's just copy once again. If I just bring this one up. Yeah. Copy that over here. Yeah, and you can see if I turn it on and off, it's exactly the same silhouette. So that's the advantage of relying on that original composition. And then let's jump back here. These are, by the way, all of these are coming from Magnific. Magnific has this image creation feature or generative model called Mystic version 2.5, where you have the option to use a structure reference and a style reference. So the structure reference in this case was that image that we had in Illustrator, just of the backdrop. And style references were different images of clay models or scenes that I used. And then we can see that there's some really fun versions of the llama, but each time I did this, notice that it changed the background. So because I had in the prompt cacti or cactus, it actually made those hills or turned those hills into cacti as well. In most cases, like here as well, you can see that's the mistake it made. But this can be ignored if we separate things. So if I only pick the llama from these generations or generated results, I really like this one, for instance. This llama looks really fun. I think we can use that one. Yeah, with the yellow hat. I think that's really funny. This one is a good one. So let's just download this. And we open this also in here. And then let's just drop it over to our other composition. And again, the silhouette should be the same, maybe slightly off here because I used a different version of it. But I'm just going to use quickly the remove background. Let me see first, select subject. It should find the llama quite well, yes. And then we will just mask this out. There you go. And once we have the combination that we like, we can obviously test out different views. Like this version I prefer because it has more contrast, while the other one is a bit more crazy. It probably doesn't work as well. These are great just to test the composition. So, and again, this is why it's useful to have like split your composition into the backdrop and the subject and then combine them together. And by the way, here in Photoshop, now we also have this feature called harmonize, which can be extremely useful. It doesn't work always well, but it does a really good job in most cases to make sure that your layer that you place on top of another composition feels like it was already in that place. So besides your selection, this can be the adjustments to colors and tonal values. So it's here in the contextual taskbar. You can see it on the top. I'll just bring this down a bit so make sure everyone can see it. So if I click on harmonize, it's going to change that layer slightly and try to match the colors and shading and lighting on it to make sure that it fits in the background. And in this case, I think it doesn't need to do too much, but it should still be slightly different because the llama feels like it's in a bit more warmer colors. And see, that's what I mean. It's done a really good job. I haven't tested this before, but you can see that was before and this is after. It even generated the shadows for us. So I would say even the focus changed slightly. Like it's a little bit more blurred, which suits the original composition. Before it seemed a little bit more sharper. But yeah, overall, it feels so much more natural, like it really was generated in this environment. And then again, we can turn off this harmonize layer and we can turn on the other layer, which is obviously much more colorful. And if I hit harmonize again on the llamas layer, I will be able to have two versions of it. And you can even save layer groups or layer comps in Photoshop to have these variations saved. But yeah, harmonize feature is extremely useful. And I started using it more and more. Instead of me tweaking adjustment layers and filters, this is a good first step just to test how things would work. And similarly to when you generate things in Photoshop, you will get 3 variations here as well. So this is also considered a generative layer when you use harmonize, and you can see which one is the best. I think this one looks quite good. This is quite good as well. But again, the best thing to check is how it changed the original version to the new version. So you see how quickly, even though we generated the background and the foreground separately, we could harmonize the two together. And of course, later on, I could still go in and add some shadows if I wanted to. Again, tweak the highlights and shadows if I needed more changes. But right now, you can see if I turn off the layer that we have here, we can still come back to the other version of it. And once again, this was the llama we got before and after. So yeah, harmonize. Cool. So let's move on to another example. I'm just going to keep this on my screen in case we need to jump back to it. And let me just jump back here. So another thing that I really like about generative AI, or I like to use generative AI for, is to test different visual aesthetics. So if I have a composition in mind, like in this case, again, there is a sketch, and this was turned into an ink drawing, which, I mean, an illustration, which looks great. First, it wasn't detailed enough. So again, in this case, it was magnific with the following settings that we can see here below it. That was created from that simple sketch. There's some strange artifacts like eyes on the hands and stuff like that, but that can be improved quickly. But the good thing about AI is that the same reference that you have, this simple sketch that you can see here on the left, can then be used to generate completely different results, like a watercolor. Would that fit better the art direction or the style that we are after? And then we can see different watercolor styles, then also 3D render. So very quickly, and this takes a matter of minutes to have all these different variations before you set out to do the entire project. You can really think about the style and visual direction that will best work for your project. So this is, again, just from a simple sketch, you can test out so many different variations. Now, another cool thing, and this is a creative exercise for you, which again you may have not tried before, we can even try it together. It's always fun to do. There is this example. One of my first experiments with AI when they introduced it in Photoshop is world building. So, or something similar to photo bashing, but instead of relying on stock images or images, photographs, you use generative AI to slowly, piece by piece, build up a composition. So you can see here, I just show you the entire composition. If I just go back to have, actually, I can show you having all of these turned on all at once. So this is the final result of this little experiment that I had in Photoshop, but it started off with this single image that you can see on my screen. Then I expanded it further out to have more space at the bottom. Then I added a lake. Then I extended the lake. Then I added some rocks. Then I added an island in there. Then I started adding the ruins on the island, and then I decided, okay, maybe we can have some more rocks. We can have some boulders here on the left side as well. Maybe we can have even more boulders, and I think I added even more stuff in here. Actually, that might be further down somewhere in these layers. I can't remember now. But anyway, the final result has also the castle or this fortress built into the mountain. And again, this was all built up bit by bit. So each uh, tower I added one by one using generative AI or generative fill in Photoshop. But the coolest thing is, once you have a good composition that you like, that you built up from scratch, you can then enhance it with a tool like Magnific and look at the amount of detail this can have. So if I zoom closer, once again, this looks very generated because of the difference in like focus. The some details are more in focus, some others are more blurry, so it's not consistent. The focus, that's a very common trait of using multiple generative fill layers in Photoshop, but this can all be fixed with a tool like Magnific. And once again, look at the before and after. It stays very close to the original composition. Like almost every little detail is exactly the way I set up and created. But obviously, it has a lot more detail, both the mountains, the trees, and here's that island in the foreground has a lot more definition and detail. And the cool thing is, once you created a version like this, you can bring it back into Photoshop and you can start refining things. Like I can see a little mistake there in the background that can be removed. I'm just using the remove tool. And then if we don't like some detail like this building here, we can maybe make a selection on it, like this detail, make a selection on it. And then normally, if you just do generative fill and you don't write anything in the prompt, it's going to try to remove that detail, or it creates something similar to it. And that's also something that in Photoshop specifically, I like to do, that instead of relying on the text prompt, more I am more careful about my selection. So in this case, as you can see, it removed it. So if I didn't specify anything in my prompt, and I actually already like it better than it was before. But if I specify in my prompt, it's a medieval. Just type in here, medieval. Oh, why is it not typing? Yeah, the medieval uh, castle ruin, and then generate. You can also, of course, use references within generative fill in Photoshop if you want. But in this case, I'm just relying on the environment, the rest of the image. And you will see that in that case, now that I specified it, it did a much better job adding some detail there instead of just completely removing it. Like this, actually, I really like. This looks quite good as well. And yeah, if I go back to my layers, this was before and this is after. So we can also just see this part I really like as well with the boulders. Once again, if we look at the before and after, it's so cool how Magnific really retains all the details or all the original composition, but just really adds so much definition and detail on it. So yeah, the experiment and the this is really a playful thing that I recommend to try out, is that you start with a blank document. So maybe we can start with like a square, blank square document, um, or maybe even something smaller, something like this. And then I select all and I say generative fill, and I want to start with let's just say a lake, or in this case, just so it's not so similar to this, I'm going to start with an apple tree in a um, in a uh, on a volcano. Apple tree. No, no, let's not do volcano. Apple tree in Sicily. Let's just do that. Actually, it would make more sense if it's olive tree in Sicily. So let's start with that. And then let AI, in this case, let AI guide you a little bit. So, of course, you will still be able to choose which composition you like. And if you don't like any of the examples or any of the generated images, you can just say a single olive tree in Sicily, see in the background. Just going to change my prompt, improve my prompt a little bit. Some olive trees can look really ancient. That could also be a cool detail in the prompt if it's not making it already old. So let's just try one more. A single ancient olive tree. Okay. There you go. Yeah, some of these look really cool. Like this one, I can imagine working. And then, yes, so from this point on, now that we have a good example or good subject that we can work with, we can start expanding this. So we can use the crop tool and we can decide where we want this to be. Maybe I will expand my canvas and have the tree aligned to the rule of thirds. And I'm not even going to say anything in the generative expand. So I just let Photoshop imagine what could be in that environment in the surrounding details. And then once again, we can see 3 options to choose from. I think something like that looks quite nice. And then we can start adding stuff to this. So for instance, here in the background, we can make a selection and then we can say generative fill, and we can do a monastery. Let's just do a monastery in the background, Sicilian monastery. Let's do that. So this is a technique, of course, that has been around for a long time. Photo bashing, putting things together to create a composition. Matte painting, they use this very often for matte painting. But this is obviously a completely different approach, where you, instead of looking for photos that could work well together, you rely on AI to quickly come up with something, a composition that you want to create. And this is more, like I said, a creative experiment. So I highly recommend to try this out. And then obviously I would just keep adding, like you've seen me with the previous example. And we could maybe have some people in the foreground, maybe a person sleeping under the olive tree. There could be something in the sea, like a big sailboat, and so on and so forth. So there's so much potential in a simple composition like this. We could also extend the tree, make it even bigger, branching out. Maybe there could be so much other things in this empty field in the foreground that is currently a little bit barren, but we could add a lot of things to this. But yeah, so I highly recommend to try this out. And then again, the main issue with this technique is that it's going to have clear signs of the fact that it's generated, and parts of it were not generated at the same time. But that can all be fixed in the end when you run this through a tool like Magnific, which would enhance the entire image and add a lot of additional detail into it. So maybe let's just add one more thing here. Actually, let's just move on because we won't have time for everything that I wanted to cover. But yeah, that was another creative exercise that you can do with AI. But here's some more examples of sketches used. Sketch is something that I really like to rely on because it really defines what you want to achieve well, and you don't have to be amazing at drawing to create sketches that will work for generated images. This one again is I've done this in Firefly with the composition reference, and I believe I use style reference as well for the colors. But you can see I also added the text prompt. But even without the text prompt, it already created really good results. So the whole idea here was to have this perfume bottle balanced on rocks in the middle of a lake at sunset. And what I love about AI is how convincing it is when it comes to complex details like see-through materials like glass that reflects light as well. So there's a lot of things here that I am just not good enough to be able to recreate this, from simply combining photos together to have that exact light reflected the way it is, like reflecting upside down. There's a lot of things here. It might not be perfect because it's AI that came up with this, but it's still better than what I would have done if I had to put this composition together. So if I had that image of the perfume bottle, I'm not sure if I would have been able to create the lighting as convincingly as this. Similarly to what we've seen with the harmonize feature, AI is just so good at combining things together. So that's one of the strengths that I always like to rely on, like creating reflections in general. I can show an example of that if I just bring up an image. Let's just see, maybe this one here. You can see the reflection of this guy here on the left. That's all AI. This is actually a separate image, this person here on the left. And actually, you can't see the reflection properly. But if I move it away, this was generated to make it look like he's standing in this muddy scene. So blending things together is again so good in AI for when you use AI for that. And I can show you another example of this. Here's a composition that I put together without the use of AI. So this little composition was based on a sketch, like I always do. There's my original sketch. Just turn this on and put it on the top, and I'm gonna increase the visibility of it. So yeah, that was my original sketch. I had this idea of have off the map text with made up of branches, and I have these animals sitting on it. And for things like this, what you can use AI for is, here I used actual real images of twigs, and I used the puppet warp to bend them and move them in the direction I needed them to be. But then there are certain details, like for instance here, where the two twigs are overlapped, that I could make a selection around it, like let's say here, and even without specifying anything, I just do a quick generate on this, a generative fill, and let's see what it is going to come up with. Most likely it's going to merge them together. There you go. So it creates a perfect combination of the two. Like, this looks so realistic. So again, I didn't rely on the entire composition trying to ask AI to turn my sketch into this. I only use AI to enhance it. to make it more believable. And the same thing would work on all of these intersection points where details meet. I mean, I already did a fairly good job at trying to combine them, but there's definitely details that could be improved. Like here, again, maybe this could look better if we do another generative fill layer on this. And one thing that you have to keep in mind, that whenever you use generative fill in Photoshop, it will also fill in the entire selection. So you might want to use a mask to make sure that the generated details won't include the background color, because that can cause problems. So it's just a simple thing of having the original mask of the outline of that shape that I would use in this case. Uh, Here it didn't do such a good job as on the other one, but it could just maybe be a couple of additional generations that it would nail the combination of those two details. So yeah, using AI to combine things and merge things together or blend things together is another thing that I really like it to be used for. And here's a project. So this is actually one of my most recent classes on Skillshare. If you want to check it out, it's around 3 hours long. I go into really, no, actually 2 hours long. I go into really through all the steps that I use to create these posters for the charity called Amazon Aid. We partnered with them and we did a contest as well about this. But then I turned this into a class showing how I would use AI to create a variation of posters for using the same composition. So it's this one, designing impactful posters with Photoshop and generative AI, that I highly recommend to check out. I'm just going to show you the one of the compositions, and this is actually something that I walk through step by step in the course, that shows the original sketch, which I will bring up here on my screen quickly. Just go over here. Yeah. So there you go. That's the original sketch. I combined a couple of different things. I use some of my a sketch from a different project for the portrait of a woman, and I actually used some AI generated drawings of animals because it just was faster to get it done by that. But obviously, it could have been just simple rough sketches as well. But this was the idea of having a giant tree in the middle and have the native people of the region, the Amazon region, on the right side, and then have maybe the jaguar there on the right side as well, and then the deforestation, the effect of deforestation on the left side. So it's like a split composition contrasting left and right side, and this is tricky to do with AI, because what happens when you do this is that things blend into each other and don't always work out well. So, and obviously because there's a lot of details, like there has to be these harvester vehicles on the left side, there has to be some details on the right side. It starts to create these weird artifacts, like this jaguar doesn't look like anything real. And again, the left side will start going into the right side, like here we can see fire showing up on the right side where I didn't want that to happen. But what you can do again is to start combining the results. So you would end up creating a couple of different variations, and then you would take the best bits of each. So the final result that we can see here, this version of the poster, you can see clearly that we have the harvester on the left side, some dead trees and some fire. But then on the right side, we have this nice composition with the sunset, the portrait of this person, and then we also have the jaguar at the bottom. So the way it's put together is a combination of multiple generated images and then further refined and enhanced using Photoshop. So this is just one of many of the posters that I made for this project. And again, in that class, I walk you through how I achieved this. And the cool thing is that I managed to do very different results in the same amount of time that normally would take me to achieve one of these, thanks to using AI. So with AI, I could explore the same composition in completely different styles, much faster. So I could go down a completely illustrative route like this. I could create this photo collage version, even in a different color tone. And then I could create more of a photorealistic version as well. And then I could create that more like cinematic, dramatic lighting version that you've already seen, and even like a painterly, like oil painting style. So lots of different styles explored in the same amount of time that normally would take me to do just one of these, if that. So yeah, if you utilize AI in your work, it can really help to speed things up, and you get to explore a lot of creative directions that normally you wouldn't have the time for, or the budget. The client wouldn't have the budget for that. So this is something that I realized since I've been using AI, that it really changed my workflow. So here's an example, and then we can do this live as well. This is from another course, actually a series of classes on Skillshare that you can also check out. Once again, if I just bring up my screen, you can find these under the Adobe Illustrator courses. So here you will see, there's more of them. There's the one with the bear. There's also a couple of other ones. I highly recommend to check these out. These are mainly showing you Adobe Illustrator techniques of how to turn a sketch into a fully finalized vector illustration like this one. Here it was, the concept was to create like a Soviet era propaganda poster using this idea of having a bear as an astronaut. And you can see that was my original sketch, which I traced over. So here, this is not a generated image. This is an illustration that I did in Illustrator. However, I always do multiple sketches for projects. Like here's another version of the same composition. And I already prepared this prompt. So instead of me spending a couple of hours of vectorizing multiple variations, so for each of my sketches, go through all of the details, would take obviously a long time. Like the sketches take only, maybe each sketch would take 10 to 15 minutes, while doing even a simple vector illustration like this takes a couple of hours. So if I don't have the time to do all three of them, but I want to present them in the same quality as this, I could go ahead and turn these sketches into something more similar to that. So let me show you this. For this, I will use Magnific again. And I believe I might have something further down here that, no, actually I don't have it. So I'm just going to drop it in here quickly. So I will use the Mystic, which is to generate new images. I drop in my prompt. I'll take off the structure reference first and the style reference. And I'm just going to drop the images in here. So we have the structure reference will be the sketch, this one. And the style reference will be the illustration that I made in Illustrator. And just to keep things the default values, I'm going to stick to 50% for both the style reference and structure reference strength. And I'm going to do maybe 4 images to generate. And I keep it on a lower resolution to begin with. And then once we get something good, we can always upscale it. So let's just generate these. So Magnific is going to start generating these for us. All 4 of them will be created here. And the prompt I used was simple: Soviet propaganda poster illustration of bear astronaut with spacesuit and helmet. Text saying bear note at the bottom, space theme illustration, grungy, gritty, textured. So once again, I'm not only using my sketch, but I also created a fully vectorized illustration in the exact style that I want. So I'm not referencing anyone else. I am referencing my own illustration style. And I'm, in a way, you can think of this as multiplying your output because for the second composition, I don't have to necessarily create the vector illustration. I could just spend a few minutes to turn my sketch into something that will look very similar to that final result. And if the client likes this composition, then I could just spend that extra couple of hours of vectorizing it and get it as close as possible to this generated image. However, here's one very important thing that I wanted to mention. If you ever use AI in your creative project, you should always be like transparent about it and actually make a point about it that even before you start working, you can check with your client, is it okay if I use AI in this project for certain things? And if so, you should always make it clear that this, out of these two illustrations, this one, or the first one that I showed you, I made already in a vector format that's ready for production, while the other one is just a preview of how this other composition would look like. So let's take a look at the first one. So it added a couple of extra text on top and bottom. Ignore that. But in general, it stuck to the original composition really well. It maintained the outline. It has the halftone effect as well in place. The bear looks good, although it's a little bit more happy compared to the more like angry bear that I had there. But again, that probably would be something I need to specify in my prompt to make the bear look more angry. But the text is rendered really well. And let's go further up. So we have 3, and there's the 4th version. I really like the halftone effect here. So you can see that very quickly I could turn the sketch into something that is very similar to the other illustration that I did. So if I zoom closer, you can see it has the textures on it. It uses the same colors. So it's just amazing how quickly I could present multiple versions of the same composition, simply relying on these rough sketches that I created. So yeah, um, hopefully that makes sense. And I wanted to also just jump back here. Let's see if there's any other ones that, yeah, another one worth mentioning is I mentioned this at the beginning, that you can also use Google Maps for input. So what do I mean by that? I had this really cool experience at the beginning of this year called Design Sprint. We had 3 weeks with students online who took part in this amazing experience, where we had workshops almost every day or every other day, working on creative projects. And one of the projects was the creation of a travel magazine with the cover and the table of contents and some additional articles inside the magazine. And this cover is a good example of how Google Maps could be used for something like this, where this is an actual real location in the Dolomites in Italy. That mountain in the background is called Marmolada. It's an amazing place. I've been there many times skiing and hiking, so I know the mountain really well. But you can see I took screenshots from Google Maps. So there's the actual screenshot in the 3D view in Google Maps. And I can actually show this in here in my browser as well. So there you go. I can move around. I can turn my camera around, so I can find exactly the angle that I want. And then I can also take multiple screenshots from details that I want to include, like this ridge in front of the mountain. I wanted to really emphasize. So I wanted to have that in the composition. And then I put these together in Photoshop, and I added a little bit more detail in the foreground with generative fill, having this person standing there. And then the whole thing got enhanced with Magnific to make it look more realistic. And the final result looks almost identical to the real location but exactly in that angle and in that lighting that I wanted for the composition. So yeah, I'm not saying that this is a good practice of faking real locations or making it look like this is an actual photo of that location, because it is not. But this is yet again another very creative way of utilizing a different type of input. So not a sketch in this case. In this case, you are using Google Map or Google Earth for the exact views of places that you want to include in your generated images. So yeah, that's another cool project that we worked on. And then yes, if there's any questions, by the way, let me know. We are almost about to wrap up. I'm just going to show one last example here quickly, and then I'm going to take a look at the questions in the chat. So here, this is also another class on Skillshare. If you want to check it out, it's here in the Generative AI Design Workflow courses. So this one is the menu design for a salad bar. And this one is also in InDesign, where I put together this menu for this salad bar. So both, sorry, that's not this project. That's the back of the menu, and the other part is the front of the menu. So in this case, what I show in the class is that AI was used for each of these bowls, because I simply used the prompt, including all the ingredients that I had in the copy that I needed for this menu. And Midjourney did an amazing job of creating or generating these images showing exactly all the ingredients that I needed. So it's all fully AI generated, each of these dishes, and it's just put together in the based on my composition or sketch that I had for this layout. So there you can see my sketch. I exactly imagined the 5 bowls like this, and then the back, and yeah, so it's all the details are generated individually. But again, this is just incredible how realistic these can look, exactly having those ingredients that I needed for this project. Okay, so there's a lot more examples to go through, but I don't think we have time to cover everything. I hope this like quick glimpse into the way I think about AI will help you in your projects. And again, if I jump back to this one just quickly, uh, remember these 5 steps that we talked about. The first one you can't really see because of my image, but yeah, thank you. This way we can see it better. So don't rely too much on AI for the composition. Instead, use sketches and have a creative idea already about the composition before you start using AI. I think is crucial. And all of these other ones, I think you've seen examples of me explaining them. So if you keep this in mind, hopefully that is going to help you. So let me see. Let me see if there's any questions. Checking on YouTube. Okay, I don't see any specific questions at this point. So yeah, it seems like whatever question was there, I probably already answered. Maybe one last quick a quick example that I'm really proud of, and something that goes beyond just using AI for image generation. You can actually, and something that I'm definitely not, I am not a developer, but one of my other classes on Skillshare, I explained this really in depth. There is a class about book design. It's quite a long one. It's around 6.5 hours long. You can find it here, Design Books in Adobe InDesign. This explains that I used a lot of things. Used AI for a lot of things, including generating a whole alphabet of these decorative initials that could be used as drop caps in the book. And I can show you the book quickly, just as an example. There's that A for the story. The illustrations are also generated. But what's most interesting is that I even learned how to generate scripts using ChatGPT that can be used in InDesign to create complex tasks. So in a way, you can use, and I have this example up here. I found it in ChatGPT. So here's the actual JavaScript that ChatGPT wrote based on my request. I said, I need these specific things to be, I want to achieve these in InDesign for this project. It's a long book and I need to create an index for it. But the index feature in InDesign is just lacking the complexity that I need. And I went back and forth with ChatGPT a couple of times. You can see I dropped in a screenshot of the errors that I'm getting, and ChatGPT understands these things really well. So it fixed the script. And after like 2-3 hours, I ended up creating a script that can index the entire book. It's a couple of hundreds of pages long, where I could specify what are the words that I want to include in an index, and it would find exactly where those are. And it could even be multiple topics that I want to do. So this dialog box is not something you would find in InDesign. It's a JavaScript that I built using ChatGPT, and it works perfectly well with any InDesign projects. I've been using it ever since that I created it. This is also part of that class. So if you check out the class, you can also download the script if you're interested. There's also a couple of additional scripts that I created for that class. But yeah, so you can go way beyond just using AI for creating or generating images. You can actually make the Adobe applications do things that they are not even, it doesn't even exist in the application. So, and again, of course, that can save you a lot of time. So that's also something that I'm really proud of. And I just wanted to mention. Okay, so let me see if there's any. Oh yes, the Milanote board. Yes, certainly, I can share the Milanote board. I'm just going to create a link for it. I'll drop it in here, and I'm just gonna turn that on. Yeah. Cool. So I hope you found this session useful, and please share your creations. I would really love to see them. And yeah, you can post your finished piece on Instagram and tag us at yes_I'm_a_designer, and also at Skillshare, and also use the hashtag Skillshare Live if you can. You can also add your artwork to the projects tab on my classes over on Skillshare to get feedback from the community and myself. And all the links and handles are down in the caption in case you missed them. And also make sure to subscribe to Skillshare's YouTube channel for more live sessions like this one. And yeah, thanks a lot for tuning in. I can't wait to pop into the project pages on my Skillshare classes over the next couple of weeks and see what you've been inspired to create. So thanks a lot for joining. Hopefully, I'll see you next time. Bye for now.